Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Coffee and EVs for May. So May 20th, 7 p.m. We'll go ahead and kick things off. I've got, like usual, a few things picked out that we can talk about, and hopefully some other folks got some things to share as well. But before we get into that, James, did you want to have any updates to share with the group? Or I know James and I talked a little bit earlier. We were thinking maybe we might just see if we could come up with a date to just kind of get folks together informally somewhere, maybe pick a restaurant or something, since it's going to look like a relatively small group. But go ahead, James.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, given that it seems like a lot's going on, and then when I did research further the cost of trying to hold the event at Stonewall and then one other state park, I feel like, timing-wise, because of the months that were selected by the group, and just the pricing on that for folks that did want to try and make the drive, but not make it back in the same day, to be able to stay at those facilities, it was pretty good. It was on the low end. One of them was for West Virginia residents was about $214 for one particular Saturday, and then the other on the high end it was like $340 for a stay. I mean, I know folks could drive elsewhere, but just in the spirit of trying to get something together rather than nothing, and trying to get more folks than the 7 or 8 that we had anticipate based on the responses and the availability, we might try and aim for a restaurant a little further towards Charleston than in the center of the state, perhaps, or since we had a decent turnout at the commissioning of the Fairmont Supercharger, we might aim for a little closer to there too for those in the northern panhandle. But I might, basically, if I have the consensus from y'all on this call, I'll redo a quick survey based on just that idea to have a restaurant meet and greet, kind of like you folks around Charleston have when you have those brunch meetings out that way in Tees Valley or Tays Valley.
Anybody have any thoughts on that, or maybe a potential place to go? I know we met at Pies and Pints for Kelly Bragsing in Charleston. And I know probably most of the folks attending are probably down that way anyway.
If we're thinking it might be up a little further north, like in the Fairmont Clarksburg area, really good restaurant. I think it was like Muriel's in the Clarksburg Bridgeport area.
Yeah, I've been there. It's very nice.
And it's not outrageously expensive.
There's a few restaurants in Flatwoods, but they're not very good.
Well, this one I'll definitely attest to. When we went up for It's Italian, when we went to robotics competitions in Fairmont with Eric, that's where the coach liked to go after the competition, and everybody was very pleased. And they can handle groups easily our size or bigger. We had a group of 20 or 25.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Could they handle a decent sized group? It sounds like they can. So, I mean, that sounds interesting to me.
I think I found them and put their link in the chat. Does look pretty good.
And we've got multiple charging options in that area for fast chargers for both Tesla and non-Tesla vehicles. So that's not a bad spot. Well, anybody have any concerns with that? If James would kind of send that out and propose that we just kind of meet at a place like that and pick a weekend?
Yeah, it'd be more so targeting the date, that works for the most people.
Well, interestingly, we'll talk about it some more, about the wonderful time we had with the 82nd Airborne. But Scott, Marty, and Larry, if we'd gone out to eat after that, it ended at 1. If we'd all made plans to just go out to eat lunch, we could have continued the conversation, and it would have been a lot of fun. I love the idea of getting together, and I love spending time with you all and talking. But for $300 a night, I think I'd almost rather drive somewhere, have a nice lunch, stay there for 2 hours, and then head back home. Especially if it's going to be the same ones. I mean, we've kind of talked to each other a lot. So Larry and Scott and Marty, I don't know what we can do to get more people. I must drive past 10 Teslas a day here, and not on one of them participate in any of the activities we do. So my own thing would be to put that 300 in my pocket and just go for a really nice meal somewhere.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where we're all kind of leaning is, let's just maybe keep it more smaller, more informal. Just get together for a meal.
And unless we can defeat the federal tax that they're considering, the $250 tax, we can save that money for that.
Yeah.
Ooh, ouch.
Ouch, exactly.
I'm impressed, though, with how reasonable everyone has been on all of these responses. Not a person has said, I don't want to pay it. They all agree with Robert that it ought to be mileage dependent, and it ought to be somewhere close to what the gas people are paying. And it's not. It's way higher if you only drive like me 7,000 or 8,000 miles a year. But it just everyone's been very reasonable and had really good comments. It was a nice discussion.
I agree. Yeah, and we want to make sure that we continue to portray the image and the mindset that EV drivers, we're not looking for a free ride. We want to be treated fairly, equitably with other drivers.
I don't think our numbers are enough to matter much, though. I don't think they're going to care. They still think everybody is rich and owns a Tesla.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, James, you need anything else on that topic before we move on?
No, thank you. I'll just, I'll put another question with a blank space if anyone wants to suggest other restaurants, and we'll go from there. But I can follow along with an email instead of waiting to the next meeting, just so we can identify when.
Yeah, we just need to set a date.
Get it? Yep, exactly. Like I said, I'd rather trim down the aspirations and make it happen than, keep planning and it not work out good for everybody. So,
yep.
I agree. Okay, well, moving on. Rick, you did bring up the car show. I did want to give you a chance to talk about that and see what your reaction was for the folks there and vehicles you had and all that.
Yeah, sometimes these things work out and sometimes they don't. We had 9 electric vehicles. They thought they were going to give us 3. And they were charging $20 a person to a car to come in if you were going to apply to try to get a trophy. But they agreed with us, since we weren't eligible for any of the trophies, we didn't have to pay. But they still were thinking of giving us 3 spots. So then we got 4, 5, 6, and it got up to 9, including the Mustang Mach-E and my Hyundai and 3 Cybertrucks and 2 Model Ys and 2 Model 3s, or 1 Model 3, I think, maybe 3 Model Ys. So it ended up being set. The Cybertrucks were pretty cool, and a lot of people came over to see those. And there's some thoughts about what they're going to do for next year. I gave them a little donation out of my pocket just to kind of make it be successful. Because it was successful for us, I hope they do it again next year, and I hope they will invite us, and maybe we can get 10 next year instead of 9. But it was much better than the Stinkfest, where we only had the Cybertruck stop by for 10 minutes, and really it was only Buddy Langdon and me that were there.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't make it to that one.
Well, nobody could do 2 in a row. That would have been, and it was 2 weeks apart because of the delay for the. But thank you all, Marty and Scott, Larry, for coming to that. It was wonderful.
Well, like Rick, like you said, it's always hard to tell what kind of reaction you're going to get. It depends on the date and the location and weather and all that. It's kind of variable. But yeah, I'm glad to hear you had a good turnout for that one.
I
Go
thought
ahead, Larry.
it went very well. I thought that was the best in terms of people we talked to, the number of people we talked to, and the reactions we got. That's the best thing we've done in a couple of years.
Awesome.
Agreed. And we had interested people that you could talk to, and some would sit in the car. I wanted them to experience it, and It was great.
We need to get them to maybe if they'll when they're setting their next event, see if we could coordinate it with Indu or something in September.
I put a thank you on their Facebook page. Marty had suggested it, and I'm glad that he did. But I know that the four of us, Larry, Scott, Marty, and I, have been around enough of these to know that the types of questions that people are asking are showing a greater degree of sophistication now. They're very different, and they wanted to talk longer, and they had really good questions. So what we didn't do, and I probably should have, is try to get a mailing list going. But we've done that in the past and gotten one or two nobody's names other than the five of us that are there.
I wondered if we could make another donation to that group. If that would
what I think we ought to do is look around for another group that we could tag on to. There's lots of these car shows. In fact, the director of the 82nd Airborne called me specifically. I want to tell you about a show that's going to be in Point Pleasant the next weekend. Do you all want to come up there? It's a buddy of his was having another muscle type car show. And if we keep our ears open or just even Google in West Virginia what car shows will be there this summer, and see if you just get maybe one more to tag on to, without it being a burden to those of us that are doing it, the more we can show the vehicles out there, the better. Wouldn't it be cool, though, if this Model 2 is really as inexpensive as they say, and somebody buys one and joins a group and show that off to everybody? You know, having EVs that are under 20,000 after the tax breaks is really cool, if it works.
I know Amanda's had some. I know she's been doing some car shows up in the Clarksburg, Morgantown area. So I mean, there's been some. I mean, again, depending on the car show, and they have different participation rates and visitors depending on the show and where it's at. Again, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a great opportunity to try to tag on to some of those shows. Hey, Scott.
Yes, I found out by virtue of my neighbor across the street when he brought back his 1960s vintage Mustang. And we got talking. He'd gone to a car show that was down at the Capitol either Saturday or Sunday just passed. So apparently there was a car show I didn't even know about. And quite a few, he won a nominal trophy or whatever, but it was just more participation one, I think. And then in August, South Charleston will have their car show for part of a day on a Sunday. I can check. I've got it on my calendar here. Let me look real quick. It's during what's called Summerfest.
But it is, I think some of the points about the car show participation is like what Rick worked out, where if they have higher fees to display or bring your vehicle, we could look at that, but it's a better setup if we can just show the vehicles and not necessarily be eligible for trophies and not have to pay large fees.
Yeah, I only mentioned what he got, and a lot of times they'll let us come like they did, I think, the 82nd Airborne. I can check into what the requirements for the Summerfest one is. It goes from 8 to 2. Unfortunately, and it is on Saturday, so should work. It's Saturday, the 16th of August here in South Charleston. I'll get back with you on I'll check into that. As far as
if it might work, throw it out. If you think you might go, throw it out on the group list and see if you can get a couple other folks who might want to show up.
Okay.
And James, we don't really have an agenda. This is Coffee and EV, so it's a free for all. You can jump in whenever you want.
Sorry, with everything going on, I forgot which one I was at. Which was it? The closed meeting? Or no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I got to experience what was to me a unique EV event, which I wish I'd known about years and years ago, or at least I wish it was around when I was in high school. But a friend of mine, or at least a family friend, is a teacher at a high school in the Shenandoah Valley, and he told me about this thing. Some of you might have heard about it, but it's the Shenandoah Valley Electric Vehicle Grand Prix, and it's part of a greater organization that They supply a group of high schools. There's like I think it's about a $5,000 entry price that the students usually raise through fundraisers and such, or their teachers write grants to get supplemental funding. But they take this money and they use it to buy these kits with raw materials to be able to build their own electric race cars, and they power them with I can't remember. They're not lithium-ion batteries, but it's a different chemistry. But they are rechargeable. And long story short, my friend is one of the teachers and coaches that guides the students through designing, building, all that. Their race cars. Let me see if I can share some of the. He mentioned it to me at the very last minute and asked if I could bring the Porsche Taycan to the event, because other folks were bringing their electric vehicles to kind of show the kids, if they weren't already familiar with what could be out there. And he's like, hey, bring the Porsche because it's like an electric race car. And so I brought it out there and had it on display for them, and I got to watch them. I couldn't stay for the whole Grand Prix, but I got to watch them finish getting their cars ready and then putting them on for the warm-up laps. And I'm failing to remember how to share my screen. Robert, can you give me a hand?
The little it's got a box with an up arrow in it down on the control bar about midway. It says present now.
Here we go. I was in the wrong pop-up window. But yeah, let's see if I can just go ahead and share the screen. And let me know if I need to make it bigger. But so this is their little logo, and my understanding is there's others that participated in, but the school that hosted this session of the race was out near Winchester, Virginia, near the Eastern Panhandle border. But this is all the kids that participated. They had 16 teams originally, and I think 14 made it. But one of the teams actually was hosted to participate in the international version of this. It was in Dubai, and they had just gotten back the previous week from Dubai, and they had placed very well out there. A school further away in Virginia, I can't recall which. But more importantly, what we all might care about is here's one of the cars, like an example of one of the cars they put together. They're all three-wheelers, so they've got the drive unit in the back and then steering up front. And I wish I could remember all the technical details, but they can run at full tilt for about 27 minutes if they're going full tilt before they need to recharge. But when they're just pacing themselves and doing testing, I think they had a much greater runtime than that. But it's just really something, because the kids, they do all the body work to bend the frames together. They choose what kind of steering linkages and all that to use, and then here's them going around.
I love the roar.
Yeah, it was interesting. A couple of them had, even though they were all using pretty much the same batteries and certain other parts, because of, I guess, gearing ratios and things that they chose, some of them sounded louder than others. Some of them had different tones to them. And it was just really neat to see. I hope they continue on for many years, and I really wish my school had something like that when I was in it, because I sure would have been interested. But
yeah, that's cool.
They go pretty quick too. They go pretty quick.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get something like that in West Virginia.
They might already, and I just am ignorant to it. I didn't even know about this, to be honest, until
I haven't seen anything like that.
it was dropped on me. But I'm assuming it happens more across the U.S. if they have an international version of it. But I'll have to ask my friend for more details and see if
ask if they've got any more details. We could actually share it out on our list if we've got any educators or teachers who might be interested in looking into it for their school districts or something.
And since you can use, grant appropriated funds, funds you receive through grants for it, I don't imagine, as long as folks write good grant applications, I'm sure, they could get the funding for it no matter where it's at.
Grants are drying up everywhere, though.
Yeah, that's under the.
Yeah, I won't count on grants anymore.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Step back. Yeah, that is true. Oops.
Even charities are going to get taxed, so they're not going to have the money. I set up never mind. Off subject.
Yeah, well, we'll get into politics here. We don't want to go too far. All right, so I had picked out just a few things to share. Oh, where is it? All right. I saw that BP Pulse had inked a deal with Waffle House to start putting in 400 kilowatt fast chargers. Of course, it's not happening like tomorrow or anything. They're talking about, they had identified like 50 sites to start with, and they'd be rolling out in 2026, so sometime next year.
Awesome.
But it's a start, and Waffle House, at least you got 24-hour, food and the restrooms and all that, so it makes a lot of sense to kind of partner with
huge.
Waffle House.
Our Waffle House here is open 24 hours, but you can't go in and eat. After about 11 o'clock, you can only go to the window and order, and there's no drive-through. You have to walk up to the window, but they've made a whole new thing with a little shelf, so they're not open to sit in there or use the restrooms. You can just buy food for 24 hours a day.
I guess it might, depend on the location. There might be some variation there.
It's good to see that, though, because a compatriot to Waffle House or a competitor to Waffle House, Huddle House, I've noticed in Georgia, and I believe I saw them in Florida too. They had, I guess, come to some kind of agreements with the power companies because there were power company branded. I think one of them was even like 120 kilowatt chargers out there in their parking lots, and they're open 24/7. So it does make sense.
I think BP Pulse has made agreements with a couple different companies for doing this sort of thing, and it's pretty encouraging. That, of course, I think if you've read the posts I've made, Iona has pledged to put in have 1,000 stations, which would correspond to about somewhere between 75 and 100. 1,000 stalls, somewhere between 75 and 100 stations by the end of the year, and 30,000 stalls by the end of 2030. And Walmart has made a similar pledge to build out thousands of charging stations at Walmart by the end of 2030. If those two guys stick to their guns, I think any question about charging is going to be just not a big deal.
Yeah.
Yep, the more we can build out.
Are any of you familiar with Gravity and what they're doing in LA? Gravity is an EVSE company that started in New York.
Are they the ones doing the multi-unit housing stuff?
Well, they did in a garage, in a parking garage, and they came down from the ceiling. But what they're doing in LA, and they're going to hopefully do it in Charlotte, North Carolina, is just like my house is 200 amp house. It's wired for 200 amps. I would say most of the time we're not using more than 20 to 30 of those amps, 2,000 watts. And so what they do is they partner with a building that's getting 1 megawatt or 1 mega amp or something, and then they don't have to get any additional grid. They just tap off of theirs with a computer that lets the building have first choice on every watt that comes through, but then the rest of it is shared by the 10 EV charging stations, and they're 500 kilowatt stations, and within each vehicle, as one vehicle goes down, another one goes up. So it's not like 2 sharing, it's 10 sharing. And then because of that, and if you have a couple empty stations, that helps a lot. But the big thing is you don't have any expense for bringing the wire down from the pole. So Joe Holland Hyundai said it was $200,000 to bring the power down to those 2 $60,000 units, and about less than $40,000 to put them in. They're 2/3 of the expense was getting the power down. So Gravity says we're going to pair up with big monster buildings that are pulling in 1,000 volts and whatever, and we'll just tap off of there. So that's what they're going to try to do. And if this works, they're going to go to big cities all across the United States, and there's no additional addition to the grid.
Sounds like an innovative idea.
There's a second company called It's Electric that's doing the same thing in New York City.
Right, in the AC level 2, It's Electric. Yeah.
There was another company I saw some stuff from. It was called Orange, and they were doing some things. I think that's who I was thinking of for the multi-unit housing stuff. They were doing stuff with like condos and apartments, where you could basically have outlets for every parking spot could have an outlet. But they were doing something similar to what we're talking about here, where they can kind of monitor the pull and then vary the charging the amps available to every outlet. And it's just an outlet. They're not providing actual chargers, so you have to kind of bring your own charger, but it's sort of a lower cost, lower maintenance. So it's like a smart outlet.
That's part of the new standard, the J3400.
Well, I think these weren't using the J3400. These were just standard, 120, 240 volt type outlets.
Okay.
But they were smart, but they had intelligence built into the little box, so it could monitor the draw on that outlet.
I saw some in Massachusetts that come down from a telephone pole. When you put on your phone, you scan the QR code and hit "I want to charge," and the thing goes down to you from up above, and you plug in. And when you're done, it goes back up again. And they're underneath a kind of upside down turtle shell, so the snow and the rain doesn't hit them.
That's really cool sounding.
That's just DC. There's no DC.
Lots of innovative ideas out there. All right, here was something else I saw. This isn't really so much for cars or charging, but I thought it was cool. Fully autonomous and electric, large haul dump trucks. It's a mining site, and they have 100 of these. This is in China. So you got 100 fully autonomous electric haul trucks that are running around, filling up, dumping, recharging, and, moving around this site. Again, you can imagine the types of, the amount of, power and everything that they're using to drive this. But again, just kind of showing some of the things that are possible. I don't know if it was using wireless charging or not, or maybe even some type of battery swapping. But anyway, I saw it. It's like seeing more of this heavy-duty electrification, not only semis and things, but construction equipment and, haul trucks and things like that. And we have seen more. I've seen more announcements for like electric excavators and that type of construction equipment, where they operate in cities and they're more concerned with emissions and noise and things like that in heavily urban environments. So they can use electric equipment.
I saw one this week on electric farm equipment, combines and plows, and it's all autonomous. With the GPS, they can be accurate within 6 inches, and when they detect their batteries low, they drive themselves back to the charging station and charge, and then get back out in the field, and they can work 24 hours a day, and it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point, Rick. I mean, things like this or the farming equipment. From think of the savings on one, staffing if they're autonomous, but you're not limited to 8 hours a day. I mean, these things can run continuously. All right, I saw this one. Rick, have you seen this one?
No, I don't think so.
I want to know what this guy was doing to put this kind of. We've seen some high mileage Teslas, like taxis and things that have been operated for several years. But
it only came out in 22.
yeah, but he did it in 2 years and 9 months. He traveled 360,000 miles. It's like, what are you doing to drive that many miles a day?
That's almost to the moon and back.
Isn't that 500 miles a day?
No, it's not.
It's I don't know, probably 300 or 400 miles a day though.
Yeah, it looks like 1,000 miles a day. No, yeah.
2 years. Yeah.
I put it over 2 years. Yeah. And 2 years, 9 months is closer to 3. So 100,000 miles a year.
Okay, 2 years and 9 months. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's at 410,000 now on the car. But here was the interesting bit. Well, I mean, that's interesting, but it had 87% capacity remaining in the battery at 360,000 miles.
So that's 360 miles a day.
Yeah, there you go.
That kind of mileage, you can't be AC charging.
No. He said it's mostly DC fast. I mean, that's all. It's this car is like it must be like some type of delivery driver, long distance something, but he's doing DC fast like all the time. So to have 87% left after doing mostly DC fast charging.
Well, think about it. He's averaging 40 miles a day. He's in the car 10 hours a day. He's driving 10 hours a day every day of the week.
Yeah. Seems strange.
But here was the thing, Hyundai, when they got wind of this guy, they wanted the battery pack and the motor out of that car. So they offered him, basically, we'll give you a brand new pack and motor for your car because we want the equipment out of your car so we can basically tear it down.
And look at it.
So he got a free new battery and motor out of it just so they could get his out of his car without mileage on it.
Well, Korea is not that big a place. To drive 360 miles a day in Korea,
I don't know.
How far is it from the one end to the other? Couple hundred miles?
Yeah.
He's doing a lot of driving.
I saw a thing today on the 2025 Ioniq 5, which in my vehicle, to keep the driving in the center of the lane without your hands on, you have to jiggle it about every 2 or 3 minutes. But now the new one has infrared cameras that look at your eyeballs, and it's right on the steering stalk. Do any of the others that use eyeballs do infrared, or is it just a regular camera like on the F-150 Lightning has cameras for your eyes? But the reason this article was about, if you wear sunglasses that are reflective and can't see your eyes, it keeps kicking off. So you have to decide what sunglasses you wear if you buy a Hyundai Ioniq 5.
I know a lot of vehicles have got cameras, but I'm not sure if they're infrared or not.
Okay, I looked up South Korea. It's roughly the size of the state of Indiana, and it's slightly smaller, says, than Pennsylvania. I would have thought Pennsylvania is significantly larger than Indiana, but anyway.
Probably 300 north-south.
Yeah.
Whatever he was doing, he was doing a lot of miles.
100,000 square kilometers. 39,000 square miles.
He must not have prostate problems.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick, have they solved the problem with the unit on the Hyundai that charges the battery?
We don't know yet. But it was only
problem.
1% of the vehicles, but they couldn't figure out why it was happening in the ICCU. But interestingly, if you think about a Hyundai, well, every vehicle plugs into AC, and we can all charge at 240. And almost every vehicle has got to transform that up to maybe 400 to charge your 355-volt battery, like in my Bolt. But my Hyundai is an 800-volt architecture, which means I've got to get 900 volts to charge the battery. Even if I plug into DC, I've got to transform that up to 900, and that's what that ICCU does. And I just don't think they realized what kind of a stress they were putting on that because DC as well as AC, you have to go through a transformer and it has to be cooled, and they just 1% of them broke. The problem is they replaced them and they broke again, but they didn't know why. But 1% times 1%, it was 3 or 4 vehicles that broke again after they replaced the ICCU. So, but they don't really know why it happened.
Well, 2 out of the 3 people I know in West Virginia had theirs break. So,
and mine did.
So Rick, the 800-volt battery can be charged at 400 volts. They just split the battery in half and charge each half at 400 volts. Then when it goes to power the motor, it goes back to 800 volts. It's the same way that my DeWalt weed eater works, because it's got a 60-volt battery, but it charges at 20 volts or 22 volts or something, and then because of the way it's wired. So that's how all 800 volts work, and that's why you can charge them on the that's why you can charge them like a Tesla superchargers, which only charge at 400 volts or 450.
I watched a video where a guy took a Hyundai and the other one had a Model 3, and they went to a Tesla station. They were both exactly at 10%. They wanted to get to 80. And the Hyundai was, of course, the 900-volt architecture. But what they found was it kept that highest peak level all the way to 80%, and they were less than a minute apart in terms of the Tesla charging at 400 and the Hyundai charging at 400 volts.
I think on this car, that was one of the things that they did mention. I don't see it in this article, but the ICCU failed on this car too. That was, but it sounds like that's a common thing that they're kind of working through. All right. So, other thing, did anybody see the new Slate truck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, a Slate is, by the way, an anagram of Tesla.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
That's a deliberate.
I mean, I think it's an interesting concept.
Is this the one that Bezos was going to help fund?
Yeah, he's in one of the investors in it. Yeah,
But he's a silent investor. He's not active in management.
They're pretty bare bones.
Yeah, if you're looking for a really inexpensive, truck type vehicle, I mean, I could see certain, use cases where, work vehicles and, contractor vehicles, people who do stuff in a local area who don't need a lot of range and just need a cheap truck.
I like the roll-up windows.
Truck use with those king cabs is they're never used as a pickup truck. I know people that own a pickup truck just so they can be the biggest one on the road, and they never. Once a year, they haul something with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like John was just saying, the simplicity aspect of this, trying to getting sort of like having an old Jeep or something, all manual controls and, simple stuff, things you can work on yourself. So it kind of appeals to that type of audience who's looking for a vehicle like that. Plus, cheap to buy, cheap to operate.
Manual windows, you have to crank them down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you want to listen to the some music or audio, bring your smartphone, because that's it. I think they may have some speakers that it can connect into, but that's it.
Yeah, I think it was an option even, you could buy the Bluetooth speaker option and, put it in the vehicle and then your phone connects to it to play audio.
But apparently they're trying for high safety ratings on it and everything. You'll have to meet some minimum, but they're trying to have it meet. And it's composite plastic body panels, so you get
like the old smart car.
No big deal.
Like the old smart car or the old Saturns, yeah.
Saturn, yeah.
So there's a real need for the small pickup. There's a car in Japan called the K car that's a very tiny K truck, and you can import them in the United States once they're 20 years old as a classic car. And a lot of farmers are doing that. They're buying old, worn-out K trucks. They're little delivery trucks in those little small streets they have in Japan. And they're using them for their farm and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those around.
One of my neighbors has one and loves it. Yeah.
What does he use it for?
He drives everywhere with it, except, well, drives around. He hauls things around his place. And, but yeah, it's real low cost to operate.
It's sort of like a side-by-side, sort of, but at least those would be road legal. I think this thing was only two-wheel drive, though. That was the only thing I saw that, or at least for now, I think it was only rear-wheel drive. But anyway, I wish them all the luck. I think it's neat to have something like that. If they can hit their price targets and can get the volume where they need it to be, they're going to severely limit. The build options at the factory. I think there's only the one paint color, and so pretty much all the customization happens after the fact.
Yeah, but the styling is such that they expect a person will be able to wrap it themselves, not use a specialized shop.
Yeah, and the SUV, you can make it the SUV or the truck. Then it has seats in the back like a Jeep. I guess you could take in and out.
Yep.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, and the guy came off of Tesla. I forget his name.
And then the last thing I had picked out was that a majority of U.S. auto execs believe Chinese vehicles will eventually come stateside. This was a survey done by an automotive consulting firm. And the number they had down here, 76% of automotive leaders believe Chinese car makers will eventually find their way to the States. I mean, they may say that. Now, well, what are they going to do about it? So 70% said they had concerns about the financial impact such a move would have on the U.S. auto industry.
Understatement of the century.
Yeah, duh. It's like you can see what's happening in other countries where the Chinese firms are already there, in Australia and Europe.
Well, the same thing happened to making toasters and everything else made in China.
Yeah.
Well, how many of these are going to be made in China and shipped over, or will the Chinese companies build a factory here? I mean, the Toyota factory that's here, that money still goes back to owners in Japan, unless there's American owners of it. But I mean, is the Chinese vehicles going to be built with Chinese labor, or are they going to be built in the United States with American labor?
Well, I think there's probably going to be a mix. I mean, just like today, some vehicles are imported, some vehicles are built local. But we know, like BYD was looking at a factory in Mexico. So if you can build in Mexico with cheaper labor and then get access to North American markets from that Mexican facility, that might be a stepping stone into America. Not to say they couldn't actually build plants here. I mean, obviously, the Japanese and the Koreans have done that. But, they would lose some of their cost advantage. But the vertical integration at companies like BYD, where they're Tesla on steroids with vertical integration, they build everything. They don't rely on suppliers to the extent that others do. So anyway, I thought that was interesting that at least the American, their OEMs are saying that they kind of recognize the threat, but yeah, the proof will be in what they can do about it, other than just advocate for tariffs.
Well, as I've said many times before, one of the problems we have is deciding that healthcare is a right that everyone should have, and yet we build it like it's a privilege and it's financial. And no one really likes the word socialized anything, much less socialized medicine. But 25% of the cost of every vehicle is simply the healthcare premiums of the people that built it. So that's if we have a $50,000 car, $12,500, that was just the premiums, not even any medical care. So if we could solve that problem, we wouldn't have to pay the workers so much less than, or so much more, and then just the OEMs here are going to price themselves out of, they cannot compete with laborers who are willing to work for, that amount of money with no health care costs that they have to put away.
Well, we're at a competitive disadvantage to pretty much the rest of the world. with
Oh,
our
yeah.
healthcare system.
Oh, and we're not any better.
Even Europe. So not just China. And China, though, they don't have as good a healthcare system from what I understand, and it's a lot more on the people cost. But
Well,
Europe definitely is fine. Go ahead.
I worked in England where we had socialized medicine there, and the people's expectations are just very different. You would never spend $2.5 million on a single cancer patient. We have to realize that life comes to an end, and they had people there that they just wouldn't do that stuff on them. So, but the people didn't get to choose when they had their hernia fixed. Sometimes you'd be on a waiting list for 6 months.
It's I don't know. I think the car industry's going to have problems. One thing's for sure, that the adoption rate that the car companies thought they were going to see for EVs is not going to occur nearly as quickly, and that's too bad.
Not in the U.S., especially with the policy decisions that we're making.
It's certainly occurring in other places. Norway was 97% EVs, BEVs last month. 97%.
Of course, they put a huge stiff tax on anything that wasn't.
Right.
But I do think with what you said about charging is going to come regardless, even without probably the infrastructure money. And also that if lower cost ones come in from the Chinese or Slate and others, because there'll be some imitations of Slate. And even if the Model 2 comes in and other car companies can get to where people can be convinced that it's cheaper overall cost, it'll flip.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say, I got a call from Charleston City Council member today, and the two AC chargers in Shanklin parking garage on Virginia Street has the fact that they're not charging any extra for them has raised a bit of a sore point, and they're going to start charging a little bit more. I don't know quite what it's going to be, but so you won't be able to plug in just for the cost of charging in the garage. It might be a little bit more. And the garages are free at night, and they're going to charge to plug in the evenings as well. So I know it's too bad, Thornton. Anyway, that was Emmett Pepper called me about that. It's called the Green Council meeting or something, and they're meeting tonight.
When the Iona station opened in Apex, and they interviewed all the CEOs or high-uppies in those 8 companies, and the lady from Hyundai, when they said, well, what do you think about, Trump's won the election? What's there? She said, it's not going to make any difference who's in the White House. This is a transportation revolution that's going to take place. And then I saw a video kind of recently that said, and the argument, which you can believe or not, that cancellation of the NEVI program was the best thing that happened, because there were a lot of people and companies like Walmart that said, this is really going to go. We can do this and make a profit, but we're not going to do it if the government's going to put one, 20 feet down the road. We can't. So once they stopped that, Iona and Walmart and all these other charging companies are jumping on the bandwagon. We're adding over 100 plugs a week, 5,000 more by the end of this year, and probably 30,000 plugs over the next 5 years. And that wouldn't have happened if the government were still dragging their heels. Look how many we have in West Virginia based on the NEVI program, 0. But then as soon as they said no, now we've got Red E and a whole bunch of others putting them in, and they're going to jump on that. GoMart is going to put some in, and they weren't going to do that as long as the government was going to be giving somebody 800 out of $1 million to build a place right down the road. So now that there's not that competition, they're jumping in to fill the gap. And each of them at the apex, again, the recharge rate said, of all the different companies that are making the fast chargers and networking them, we only have to increase by 1% of what we were going to do anyway to make up for what the NEVI is not going to do. So we may actually have more in West Virginia after 5 years without NEVI than we would have with it. But it's arguments on both sides.
That's an interesting idea. I like it.
Yeah.
You know, I think people figured out.
Bringing it, Rick.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I wonder about the one in Covington, Virginia, that was supposed to be on NEVI. I think it's still listed as not active, and I think that was a NEVI one that people thought might go through still. But there's a kind of a real dry stretch heading west from Beckley on 64.
Any news on the Hinton?
Oh yeah, this week it's supposed to be activated really soon. The meter's in, the transformers are in. Taylor texted me and said that he thought they were going to, it's either this week or next week, they're going to get called in to put the final, get it active.
So this is the 62 kilowatt charge point?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my son charged at Summersville Saturday at the new one that the city of Summersville put in.
Really? Okay.
At the town. It's he put it on PlugShare, but I don't see it on PlugShare. If anyone else does, I must have a filter set wrong or something because it doesn't show up on my PlugShare.
It's in the town of Summersville?
It's in the town of 800 North Ridge Street or 400.
And it's the charge point DC unit too?
It's a charge point, 62 kW, and it's
right
actually in the municipal parking lot.
Right.
That's great because that's on our way to Morgantown too. So.
Across the street from the Chevy dealer.
Yeah. The Chevy with the two broken.
Yeah.
So is this a CCS charger?
Yeah, CCS, yeah. Charge point. And CCS and Chatamo.
Oh
no.
Yeah, for what that's worth.
Oh.
I
was going to ask one other question. I sent out the Taw Bay of High talks to everybody. Did anyone join it? I didn't look through who attended.
No. And I'm an old member.
I'm not seeing one on PlugShare.
No problem.
You're not?
It wasn't on PlugShare. You have to go to the ChargePoint app.
No.
I have a ChargePoint.
Yeah, it is on the ChargePoint app, but my son entered it on ChargePoint, and he sent me a screenshot of where it was showing up on his ChargePoint, but it doesn't show up on mine.
But interestingly,
So
not DC fast charging, but the La Quinta Inn there says it's got coming soon NACS and J1772 chargers in Summersville. So you have a hotel there with chargers.
Okay.
Oh, and the quality, and that's just a wall charger. Never mind. Yeah, a couple of them are advertising wall chargers.
Well, anyway, he was able to get a charge and pretty quickly. There's only one plug.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's just Chatamo or CCS. I guess you choose, and then that's the only one you got.
Yeah.
It's right between the Sleep Inn and Eckley Orthodontics in Summersville. And right across Northside Drive from Northside Chevrolet.
All right, we're glad to hear we got some more coming online.
Question for James. Your background, where is that with the West Virginia outline? You're on mute.
Thanks, guys. That was taken at the Cacapon State Park at the mountain overlook.
Yeah, that's up here in our area. Over near Berkeley Springs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very.
Is that like a Jeep trail up there, or is it just a paved road, or how do you get up there?
It's paved up until you start the trek to the summit. It becomes a gravel road that Depending on when you go up it is how many potholes there are. But, you know, right after, or I'd say June, by June, they usually have it repaved or refilled so that you don't run into any issues. I've seen minivans, you know, Toyota Siennas take it, so they do all right. But yeah, I took that picture. I got my R1S in September of 23, and the very next day after taking delivery, I drove up and down Cape. I was like, I just wanted to do it, get some nice photos, and the weather cooperated.
I missed out. I wonder if
All
James.
right, well, we're about 3 minutes till. Go ahead, John.
I just wonder if James could quickly say what I missed about where he thinks this meeting will be, where and when.
So I'm going to send out another survey. It seems by group consensus, we're going to aim, instead of going to the big state park where we, you know, looked at getting a meeting facility rented and then folks needing to get rooms for the night. We're going to aim at having a meetup at a restaurant, just to have like a group lunch kind of thing for a few hours where folks want to drive back. It's not onerous to do so in one day. We had one suggestion come in so far that I noted, restaurant-wise, near
It was Muriel's in Clarksburg.
Clark. No, it's
Clarksburg.
Fairmont. It
Between
says on there.
Fairmont.
Okay,
But
fair
out
enough.
that way. And then,
Okay.
but in the new survey, it'll just have a couple questions like, when are you available, and
Right.
do you have a suggestion on where? And then I'll email to the group
Right.
what days work best, the top answers, and see, you know, if we can come to a consensus, just so we can get it on the calendar and do it.
Right. Got it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no worries.
There's another one that's slightly more centrally located in Bridgeport called Olivier's or Oliver's. Let me see how you spell it here.
Olivieros?
Oliveros, yeah.
Olivero, yeah. I've
Yeah.
heard of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've also heard of it.
it's pretty good. I've been there a couple times.
Yeah, well, we can put a couple of those on there, or do, like you said, maybe do a write-in. But yeah, if we give too many choices, we'll end up back with where.
I was just thinking of something that's you know, a little further south.
Yeah.
Makes it easier
no,
for John to make it there.
Yeah, I ought to make it up somewhere like that. I think I can do it.
Well, at least you got some charging options up that way. The Bolt.
No,
You still have a Bolt, John?
No, I have an ID4.
That's right. You thought you'd swapped.
Yeah, needed all-wheel drive.
Yes,
I
Scott.
also, I thought of one last thing I wanted to ask. Has anyone had or know of someone who's had experience with the OMU batteries, which replaces the 12 volts on, it can be beyond Teslas, but mostly where it's been is Teslas.
It's like those are like the lithium-ion 12-volt
Yeah.
batteries.
Yeah, and they've got
I've heard
now
of them, but I'm not familiar with them.
they've also now got a sodium battery. And I just wanted to see if anybody had any experience or knew of someone in the network of EAA or elsewhere that had one. If not, that's okay.
No, but let us know how it goes. Changing, swapping out yourself. When I swapped my battery out, I had Tesla do it.
Yeah. Well, to disclose, I've had one for about 5 years and it worked fine. It still does, but it throws some alerts with Tesla, and you have to do a reset. It's pretty simple. Just disconnect the 12 volt, disconnect the high volt, wait 20 seconds, reconnect the 12 volt. It just is a little annoying when it occurs. So.
I've got a battery swap coming up for my side-by-side. Maybe I'll be able to meet Larry up at Keeney's Knob. Getting lithium-ion battery. So
I'm coming up that way this coming Thursday through the weekend.
Cool. Yeah, Thursday we'll be in Warm Springs, but
All right, guys, we're 8:02, so we'll wrap it up. Thanks, everyone, for jumping on, and we'll look forward to the survey and see if we can get a time scheduled up to meet in person.
okay.
Thanks, everybody,
Okay, thanks,
especially
everyone.
Robert and James.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, take care.